Hi there, students. Adrift. Adrift. Okay, adrift is either an adverb or an adjective, normally a post-nominal or post-positive adjective. If something is adrift, it's moving without any power. It's particularly we use this in a nautical context. If a vessel is adrift, if a boat is adrift, it doesn't have any power or any guidance, and it's not tied up to the dock. So after a big storm, there were lots of boats that had been torn adrift from their moorings. Okay, so adrift, they are moving without guidance, and this is really the idea of adrift. If something is adrift, it's not controlled because it's got a problem. So he spent 10 days adrift on the ocean because the engine broke down. You could also use this to talk about somebody's life. He lost his job and his family kicked him out, and he was adrift in the city. His life was adrift. Okay, we're moving aimlessly, moving without direction. There was no rudder, nothing to steer him. I guess you could have pieces of paper adrift in the wind, or leaves adrift in the wind. The autumn leaves had been cast adrift by the wind. They'd been taken and they were going, following the movement of the wind backwards and forwards. So adrift, floating at random, at the mercy of the wind, or the mercy of the wind and the waves. Adrift, floating aimlessly, not anchored, but not under power as well. And then more generally, without direction, without purpose. There are many young people adrift in our cities, and we need to find a way to help them get some tangible aims in their life. So moving without purpose, aimless movement. Of course, the project went adrift. Okay, it went amiss. It went in the wrong direction. There was lack of management, and the project was adrift without anybody controlling it. And I think that's the idea. Now, I've also heard this word adrift used by sports reporters, particularly I think British ones, where if you are, for example, at half time, my team were 2 goals adrift, 2 goals behind the opposition. At the 10-mile mark, the runner was 2 minutes adrift of the leader. Okay, behind. It's as if they have drifted slowly behind, and that's another way to use adrift. So notice adrift, either an adverb, life had left him adrift as an adverb, or as an adjective. But normally when it's an adjective, it's post-positive, it's post-nominal, it goes after the noun. So he spent 3 weeks in a ship adrift. The ship was adrift. You don't normally say an adrift ship. You say the ship adrift. A leaf adrift in the wind. A piece of newspaper adrift in the river. An idea adrift in his head. Okay, this is this post-positive idea. and you use it either as an adjective in this postpositive way or as an adverb. The adverb is most common. I think we use this adrift in a psychological context, or an emotional context where you are disconnected from your surroundings. You don't feel that you belong. You don't feel part of it. And then I guess in the environment, an oil spill. You could have oil that is adrift from a tanker, floating freely in the water, or being blown around freely in the wind. So the boat moved aimlessly adrift in the vast ocean. He lost his job and felt adrift and worried about his future. The leaves were carried adrift by the wind. Okay, so they were moved by the wind. He managed to get into a raft adrift, which he found floating on the ocean after the ship had sunk. Without a clear plan, the whole project was adrift and didn't have any guidance. The autumn leaves spans from to spin adrift in the cool air. The balloon went into the hot air balloon went into the sky adrift. It floated adrift. Or an astronaut in space who let something go, and if it's not tied on, it will just go adrift. Okay, so adrift. My mind was adrift from reality. You put your headphones in and you are adrift from all the things that are happening around you. If something has no direction, nobody at the rudder, then a business could be said to be adrift. His reckless spending habits left him adrift in a sea of debt. Okay, so you're adrift. After the breakup of his marriage, he felt adrift and couldn't find any psychological balance. He was adrift in a sea of self-doubt. The death of his parents left him adrift with nothing to guide him. Okay, so as an adjective, a boat adrift was on the open sea, or the boat was adrift on the open sea. Usually with these postpositive adjectives, most commonly with the verb to be, was adrift. So, what about some formality and origin? Formality, I think I'm going to give adrift a 6 in formality. Semi-formal conversation, semi-formal writing, or something very formal. It sounds a little bit literary, and it comes from Proto-Germanic drift is to drift, to move. So, adrift.